In the frozen silence of a besieged city, where the wind howled through shattered windows like the last breath of a dying world, the human mind stood at the absolute edge of survival. Leningrad, 1941. The Nazi war machine had encircled the cradle of the Russian Revolution, cutting off supply lines and trapping nearly 3 million souls in a cage of ice and hunger. What followed was not merely a military siege, but a profound experiment in human endurance, where the fragile architecture of the psyche was tested against starvation, cold, and a slow erosion of hope. This was the moment when civilization's veneer cracked, revealing the raw mechanisms of the mind fighting for one more day. The collapse did not announce itself with fanfare or sudden violence. It crept in through empty stomachs and lengthening shadows, forcing ordinary people to confront questions no textbook could prepare them for. How much suffering can consciousness bear before it fractures? Before the guns thundered and the blockades sealed their fate, life in Leningrad pulsed with the rhythms of Soviet ambition. Workers streamed into factories producing tractors and tanks, children attended schools adorned with portraits of Lenin, and families gathered in communal apartments, sharing stories of the revolution's triumphs. The Neva River flowed steadily past grand palaces and modest homes alike, carrying barges laden with grain from the south. Evenings brought the scent of black bread and strong tea, the murmur of radio broadcasts extolling industrial progress, and the laughter of young pioneers dreaming of a brighter socialist future. Daily routines masked the underlying fragility. People mended clothes, queued for rations, and found solace in literature and music, believing their society was built on unshakable foundations. Yet beneath this surface of normalcy lay the invisible threads, connecting individual minds to the collective fate of an empire strained by rapid modernization and political purges. No one imagined that the very resilience they took for granted would soon be pushed into uncharted territory. The early warning signs were subtle, almost imperceptible at first, like faint cracks in the ice before the river breaks. Rumors of German advances filtered through censored newspapers, met with official assurances of inevitable victory. Factories began shifting to war production, and air raid drills interrupted ordinary afternoons, but most dismissed them as precautions, rather than portents. Families noticed slight reductions in bread quality, longer lines at markets, yet continued their routines with determined optimism. Psychologists would later recognize these as the mind's initial defense, denial and rationalization, mechanisms that allow consciousness to maintain stability amid mounting threats. The human brain, wired through millennia of adaptation, prioritizes short-term survival by filtering out overwhelming dread. In Leningrad, this meant mothers still reading bedtime stories while distant artillery rumbled like approaching thunder, and engineers repairing machinery as if peace were assured. But no one understood what was coming next. The invisible warnings accumulated quietly, building pressure within the collective psyche until the illusion of control began to slip away. As autumn deepened into the brutal Russian winter, rising tension gripped the city like an iron fist. Supply convoys were severed, and the first waves of bombardment shattered buildings and nerves alike. Electricity faltered, then vanished, plunging homes into darkness where the only light came from flickering candles or the eerie glow of distant fires. Hunger gnawed at the edges of awareness, transforming simple cravings into obsessive thoughts. People spoke in hushed tones about dwindling reserves, their voices carrying the strain of forced composure. Social bonds, once a source of strength, now strained under the weight of scarcity. Neighbors eyed each other with suspicion over missing potatoes, while families divided meager portions with mathematical precision. The mind, facing energy depletion, began prioritizing essential functions, dimming higher cognitive processes like creativity and long-term planning. But the human spirit responded with remarkable ingenuity at first. Libraries remained open, lectures continued by candlelight, and diarists recorded their observations with clinical detachment, as if documenting the experiment their lives had become. Instability grew, but the collective will held, a testament to the psyche's capacity for adaptation, even as resources evaporated. Key decisions and mounting pressures accelerated the descent. Stalin's regime demanded unwavering resistance, forbidding evacuation for many and enforcing draconian measures against perceived defeatism. Military commanders weighed impossible choices between feeding soldiers and civilians, while party officials rationed calories with cold bureaucracy. At the individual level, people confronted moral dilemmas that tested the boundaries of identity, whether to share food with a weakening parent or conserve for children, whether to report a neighbor's hidden stores or turn inward. These pressures exposed the mind's vulnerability to cognitive dissonance, where survival instincts clashed with ingrained values of solidarity. Mistakes compounded rapidly. Delayed decisions on ice roads across Lake Ladoga meant thousands perished waiting for rescue. The psychological toll manifested in vivid dreams of feasts, hallucinations of warmth, and a creeping apathy that dulled emotional responses. The brain, starved of glucose, began cannibalizing its own tissues, mirroring the societal breakdown occurring outside. By this stage, the collapse was no longer external but deeply internalized, reshaping personalities in ways survivors would struggle to recognize. The moment the system began to fail arrived not with a single cataclysm, but through 1,000 quiet surrenders. As temperatures plunged below -30 degrees Celsius, bodies weakened by malnutrition succumbed to frostbite and disease. The mind, pushed beyond its limits, entered a state of profound dissociation. People walked streets lined with frozen corpses, their expressions blank, the horror too vast to fully process. Cannibalism, once unthinkable, emerged in shadowed alleys as desperate individuals crossed the ultimate taboo, their actions driven by primal imperatives that overrode cultural conditioning. Silence replaced conversation. The city became a realm of ghosts shuffling through snowdrifts, where the sound of one's own heartbeat grew deafening in the void. This phase revealed the fragility of the social contract, how quickly norms dissolve when the prefrontal cortex, seat of reason and empathy, starves. Yet even here, glimmers of resilience persisted. Secret diaries captured the inner monologue of endurance, mothers sacrificing their last strength for offspring, and scientists continuing research amid the ruins. The failure was systemic, but the human mind fought fragmentation with every remaining synapse. Human consequences unfolded in a cascade of social breakdown that scarred the collective soul. Families disintegrated as parents died, and children roamed as orphans, their young minds imprinting trauma that would echo through generations. Trust evaporated, theft became commonplace, and violence simmered beneath the surface of exhaustion. Psychological studies conducted after the siege documented widespread cases of siege mentality, characterized by emotional numbing, hypervigilance, and profound alterations in time perception, where days blurred into an endless gray struggle. The mind adapted by suppressing non-essential memories and emotions, conserving energy for bare existence. Yet this adaptation came at a cost. Survivors reported lifelong difficulties with joy, intimacy, and trust. Children born during the blockade carried epigenetic marks of starvation, their developing brains wired for scarcity even in later abundance. The social fabric tore, leaving communities haunted by unspoken guilt and the knowledge that civilization's rules were conditional, contingent on full bellies and warm homes. In the depths of despair, some found meaning through art or faith, clinging to fragments of identity as anchors against total psychological dissolution. The long-term historical impact of this ordeal extended far beyond the lifting of the blockade in 1944. Leningrad's survival became a symbol of Soviet resilience, yet the psychological wounds influenced post-war policies, literature, and collective memory. Diaries like those of Tanya Savicheva, whose childlike handwriting recorded family deaths with heartbreaking brevity, humanized the abstract statistics of over 1 million fatalities. The siege reshaped understandings of trauma, contributing to early concepts in disaster psychology and influencing global studies on extreme environments. Governments worldwide took note, refining civil defense strategies and rationing protocols with newfound awareness of mental limits. On a deeper level, it illuminated the plasticity of the human mind, its ability to endure the unendurable while forever altered. The event accelerated medical research into starvation's neurological effects, revealing how prolonged caloric deficit impairs memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation. Empires and societies studying this rupture gained insights into the breaking points of populations, lessons applied in subsequent conflicts and crises. Yet the true legacy lay in the quiet testimony of survivors, whose fractured psyches bore witness to humanity's capacity for both degradation and defiant persistence. Even as the blockade ended and reconstruction began, the echoes of mental strain lingered in rebuilt streets and guarded conversations. The human mind, having peered into the abyss of survival, carried an indelible imprint. Stories emerged of phantom hungers that persisted decades later, of nightmares where the snows swallowed loved ones whole. Historians and psychologists alike returned to these accounts, seeking patterns in how consciousness navigates the edge. The collapse of Leningrad was not unique in history. Similar ruptures occurred in the Irish famine, the trenches of the Somme, the camps of the Holocaust, but its scale offered a laboratory of suffering that exposed universal truths. The brain's survival circuits, honed by evolution for immediate threats, proved both miraculous and treacherous when stretched across months of unrelenting deprivation. Empathy eroded, yet acts of quiet heroism persisted, suggesting that some core of humanity resists total eclipse. These insights continue to inform modern responses to disasters, from refugee crises to climate-induced famines, reminding us that infrastructure can be rebuilt faster than the psyche it houses. In the end, the story of the human mind at the edge of survival is one of haunting ambiguity. We emerged from such darkness not as unchanged victors, but as beings forever marked by the proximity to our own dissolution. The silence that fell over Leningrad's frozen streets in those darkest months speaks across time, warning that the structures we build, social, political, psychological, are more fragile than we dare admit. When systems fail, the mind does not simply endure, it transforms, sometimes breaking, sometimes forging new strengths from the shards. As we navigate our own era of uncertainties, these historical ruptures compel us to reflect on the invisible threads holding our sanity together. The collapse did not end with victory parades or rebuilt monuments. It lives on in the quiet vigilance of those who remember what it means to stand at the precipice, where every thought becomes a battle for one more breath, one more connection to what makes us human. The wind still carries whispers from those empty apartments, reminding future generations that survival is never guaranteed, and the mind's greatest test may yet lie ahead.